Welcome to the Healthcare IT Today CIO podcast. I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today, and I'm excited to bring you the most practical healthcare CIO insights and perspectives. We know your job is challenging, and we want to help you be more successful. And our guest today is Rich Temple. He's VP and CIO at Deborah Heart and Lung Center. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. A longtime friend. We've spent a lot of time at conferences yucking it up, and I'm glad to share your insights here on the CIO podcast. But tell us a little bit about yourself and Deborah Heart and Lung Center.
Be happy to. Well, I've been at this for decades, probably more decades than I care to admit, actually. I've been around the block in the industry. I've been a vendor, I've been a consultant, and for a number of years, I've been on the provider side. And I love what I do, and it's exciting to be at the cusp of so many interesting technological revolutions and evolutions in some cases in the health IT world. So much is changing so quickly that it's always there's always a challenge. It's always fun to be able to keep on top of. As for where I work, I am Vice President and Chief Information Officer for the Deborah Heart and Lung Center. We're an 89-bed cardiovascular specialty hospital that is in the wilds of southern New Jersey. And for those of you who don't think New Jersey has wilds, we do. And I can see it out my window.
We know Jersey's wild all the time. We see the beach. That's a different
one. Right? Wild in a different way.
Awesome.
And we are a alliance partner of the Cleveland Clinic Heart and Vascular Institute. And we are we see some of the sickest patients in the state due to our specialty. And we have one thing which is very unique about us. We're one of 3 hospital systems in the country that don't balance bill patients. There's Shriners, there's St. Jude's, and there's us as part of our mission. And we have a waiver that allows us to do that at our hospitals. So it's really in everybody's DNA that we take care of the patient first and we worry about the money later, though you always have to worry about the money at least a little bit because that's how you keep the doors open. But it is something kind of special that we're all really part of, and we appreciate it every day when we come in and have the opportunity to take care of people.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess that's why we're not going to talk about revenue cycle management. Instead, we're going to talk about some patient engagement, which
we do have to go extra aggressively to reach out to our insurance company partners and get reimbursements, but we don't chase our patients at the hospital itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about patient engagement. How do you see the world of patient engagement? How has it changed since you started in health IT?
Well, many years ago, I think the words patient engagement and the whole concept of patient engagement were really uttered all that much. I mean, I think everybody understood that having a superior patient experience was a competitive differentiator for a hospital, but there weren't that many vectors through which you could actually be able to do that kind of outreach. I mean, it was a different world back then. I think the onset of widespread EHRs really became the foundation upon which you could identify who you need to target, what kind of messages you need to target. Based on whatever clinical parameters that you're looking at. And also as CRM tools have become increasingly more sophisticated and increasingly more prevalent in the healthcare space, that's really also made a difference in terms of, today making the whole idea of patient engagement real. I think, and that also goes part and parcel with the fact that people now for some number of years have had the experience of being able to easily just make a few taps and buy things through e-commerce, through the Amazons of the world. And I think all of us are thinking that wouldn't it be nice if healthcare was like that too? I mean, people have that expectation. I could go on, tap, 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 and I get whatever I need and boom, it's there. It's not as easy in healthcare as it is if you're just buying something on Amazon because healthcare is fragmented. There are third parties who are paying part of a bill for you. There are other rather onerous processes like prior authorization. Amazon doesn't have to worry about those things, but we do. And I think that's made it a little bit challenging for us to be able to replicate that kind of ease of experience in terms of interacting with our patient population. But we have to cut through all that noise and find a way to make that happen. And I'm really seeing in the last few years that it is really becoming a thing. We've talked about it for a long time, but I'm really seeing it become real. I mean, especially post-pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting comparison because you're right. Like we didn't really have the tools available to engage patients. And to me, it's about the scale, right? Like we could engage patients decades ago on the phone, right? But that doesn't scale. That's still
Exactly.
people, right?
Those are the old manual processes.
Yeah, exactly. But now we have this variety of tools that we can do at scale, whether it's a text message or whether it's even a phone call, that's automated with a robot, et cetera. So that's interesting to think about that change, right? And the opportunities that are available to us. But are there some areas where of patient engagement that you think maybe haven't gotten enough attention that you're working to address?
I would say making bidirectional texting feature more prominently in our outreach. I think we're
Mm.
all aware that texting is now playing an increased role in terms of how healthcare providers perform patient engagement, but we want it to be maybe more than just part of it, just another arrow in our quiver, so to speak. I see it as being something that can become one of the primary vectors through which we communicate with folks, because from a contact center perspective, if you're processing texts, in point of fact, you can process two or three times as many texts as you can calls. And there's a different expectation on the part of the patient when you're texting. They do expect you to get back to them promptly, but you don't have them sitting on hold, staring at the ceiling for an inordinate amount of time. So it's very efficient like that, and it allows for a different type of dialogue. It also allows, if you drop a text to somebody and they happen not to be there, you don't have to leave them a voicemail and hope they return your call. You've gotten your message out there, and generally speaking, you know that they've gotten your message, which is really nice. So that's, I mean, we all talk about texting, but I think I really want to see texting as being the next frontier that really grounds a lot of our patient engagement efforts. Another one, I mean, we talked a little bit in jest about calling people, but you know what? The telephone is still a very real vector,
Yeah,
and
especially
we
in
do.
rural.
Absolutely. And we have to make sure the process through which someone goes when they call us is as straightforward as it possibly can be. We want to improve that experience for callers in terms of the phone tree that we have set up. We want to be able to get them from point A to point B as efficiently as possible without having to touch 98 different keys to get where you need to go. We want to make sure that you get to go where you need to go the first time. If it's a med refill for our vascular department, well, we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for you to get to the person who can do that, as opposed to being bounced around 10 different times. So we want to clean up the phone tree. We want to be able to allow voice commands as well. So you could say somebody's name, or you could say the name of a department and what you're doing, and it will route to that. So we're in the early stages of doing that right now, but that's something which is very much on our plate. That's one of our big initiatives. Sorry. But those are really two things, because the phone is not gone. As I said, we're loving texting. We're loving being able to pursue leads through our website. Again, that's not brand new technology, but I think the depth and sophistication that we have in terms of being able to run with those leads when they come across, that's improved a heck of a lot in the last few years. So those are really the big areas, making texting more pervasive and making it a more effective tool. And even for those folks who call us, making sure that they don't have a frustrating experience being on hold for 60 minutes and then getting cut off or something like that.
It's interesting you described that, because, well, one, I'm hearing all sorts of call center companies that are working using AI on top of voice to do innovative things. So I think that is a really interesting space. But I actually lived the experience you just described. I ended up in the ED, and I had to call for a follow-up after that. I got bounced through 3 phone trees, no one knowing who to get the right person to give me the results that I needed. They finally, after a second call, or, a third bounce, whatever it was, they finally got me the lady, but she wasn't available. So I had to leave a message. And I'm just praying that she calls me back, right? And then she had to call a few times, which wasted her time. She finally got through, and we got the information we needed. But then after I did that, I realized there was another question, because I misunderstood the drugs that they were prescribing.
Right.
I thought they were the same, but thank you to the portal, I saw that they were different. And so I went in the portal and I saw, oh wait, those drugs are different. So then I had a question: do I keep both of them or just one of them? And I was like, oh crap, do I have to call again?
Did you get to do the secure?
And
Did
I'm
you get to
like,
do the secure
no.
message thing? Is that?
Yeah, well, I was like, but so I did exactly what you said. I went to the secure message and like I'd never texted this doctor before. And I was like, I pulled up his name. I sent the message. I said, should I take both or just one? She replied, and it was simple, right? Saved her time, saved me time. It was beautiful. So I lived what you described.
Yeah, and it is so frustrating, and it's extra frustrating when it is about your personal health, and you have the inevitable apprehension of what am I going to hear and what do I need to do next, and so adding that level of stress onto people who are already experiencing something that is causing them stress. So I'd rather not
Yeah.
do that. We want to make that part of communicating and engaging with our patients just as easy as we can, so they don't have to have incremental stress on top of what they're already experiencing.
What was interesting is when I sent the message, I said, will they reply? And so I had the stress and anxiety of, will the person actually reply? Because we'd never had this before. So, luckily she did within a certain time. Otherwise, I would have been back on the phone bugging her and wasting her
Right.
time again.
And,
So
and
it's
going
interesting.
through that whole cycle all over again. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
very frustrating.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the EHR was kind of the start of engaging patients. Do you think that EHRs are helping or hurting when it comes to patient engagement?
It's an interesting question. I think I have to say a little bit of both. They help because they do allow for stratification of populations. They allow for giving you the foundations upon which you can target different types of engagements. It could be for it could be for clinical trials. It could be for other research studies. It can be just for being proactive in terms of we noticed a little something here, or in talking about AI a little bit. If you have an AI tool that's reviewing diagnostic imaging, in many cases the AI tool can look at the image, can also look at your medical history, and can identify that you might be in a very early stage of a chronic illness, and allow us to be able to reach out to you before it gets too severe. So having the EHR as a data resource to be able to feed to that is really good. And again, it allows the downstream software to know how it needs to reach out to people, know the kind of messaging that is most appropriate given their clinical history, and doing all that. So I think that's a good part. The challenging part is that EHRs in and of themselves are wonderful data repositories, but not always wonderful communicators.
Mm,
So you have to have an EHR that would be plugged into a CRM type software package or something along that line. And you have to hope that the EHR's interoperability capacity is such that it can play nicely with that, because that's another variable as well that you have to think about. So I think they really can be effective catalysts of patient care, but they can't act alone. So I think EHRs helped launch this, and EHRs still play a very, very pivotal and central role with it. But in and of itself, they're challenging because you have to sort of go beyond the EHR to be able to fully actualize what a good patient engagement strategy would be like.
I think that's the frustrating part about EHRs, though, and that they haven't embraced fully the APIs. I don't know. That's my experience. That EHR vendors should be embracing the APIs to enable the CRM vendors or whoever it might be to provide the better patient engagement tools. Has that been your experience with that, or do you think that do you disagree? Do you think they're doing a pretty good job?
Oh no, I agree that it is a frustration point on many levels. I think the EHR vendors are coming to the table now and are improving in terms of their API presence, but there's still a ways to go, and not everything can be done right away, which is always
Yeah.
frustrating. But
Well, and some want to do it themselves, and some want to, there's a lot of
exactly.
details, right?
We bring in partners. I mean, how complicated does it need to be? And even if they do it themselves, sometimes you're having to have building blocks from different modules of the same
Sure.
EHR cobbled together. So
Or they do it halfway, and you're like, wait, do I go with the best of breed or do I go with the integrated?
exactly, yeah, exactly. Those are the debates that we have to grapple with all the time, so for sure. So yeah, we have a ways to go on that. Interoperability is another thing I think that's come a long way in the last 5 to 10 years. But
Mhm.
and the idea of FHIR, and again the idea of just general interoperability, and CCDs becoming more pervasive and secure messaging becoming, direct messaging becoming more widely used. So we're getting there, but we're not at the end of our journey by any means.
Well, the Q-Hins and Tefka are going to solve everything, right?
Just like that.
If only that were true.
But I think that has to be the stake. I mean, that has to be the stake in the ground. So yeah, that's not going to be the panacea, but upon that, other folks can build things, and it starts the ball rolling downhill. Well, one hopes.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere.
Exactly.
You mentioned AI. I talked a little bit about AI. How do you see AI and other technology, when it comes to patient engagement? Will that help or hurt patient engagement? Yeah, where are you at on the AI and technology are good for patient engagement or not?
It allows me to talk out of both sides of my mouth, John, because on one side of my mouth, I love it. Another side of my mouth, it terrifies me a little bit. And
oh yeah,
the part that terrifies me is the part where I'm also the HIPAA security officer for Deborah, and there are a lot of privacy concerns we've seen with AI in terms of people putting reading putting PHI into something like ChatGPT and having it potentially regurgitatable to somebody else. I mean,
doctors have already done that, right? They're gotten in trouble for it, and you're like,
yes, that has definitely happened. Or AI, you don't always know the sources from which AI is pulling, so you don't know if those sources have a bias, a bias toward or against a given group of people. So that makes it a little bit tricky. All in all, though, I mean, I think AI is something that on the other side of my mouth is I love it. I mean, it is one that's just cool as a technologist. It's just for me to pop onto Bard or go to ChatGPT and type in a question, and I'll say 4 times out of 5 get a great answer. The 5th time, it's like Lord knows what they came up with. But the idea that you can, I know you talked a little bit earlier about mining EHR data and marrying that to diagnostic imaging, where AI or machine learning would be able to zero in on things like even more than a human would, even an expert human in many cases, and can identify things early and allow for some proactive treatments of certain things. So I think there's an awful lot of potential there. It's only going to get better. And I can't wait to see what it does. But on the other hand, I sit there and I worry a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought about this, but you actually made me think, with you going to ChatGPT and stuff, like as IT professionals, we could use it like, you wouldn't go ask it, hey, what's the best secure text company and then just buy based on that.
Oh, no, but it allows you to get going on something.
Yeah, you could say, hey, give me all of the different secure text companies out there for healthcare. Yeah. And then you have your short list, right? Interesting.
And John, I did exactly that this morning.
Oh, really?
I was looking at a niche system down in our OR, and I was like, well, let me see where I should begin. And I looked at some of the obvious sources, and I looked at class, I looked at other things. And so let me just pop this into Bard and ChatGPT and see what they say. And they gave me they gave me something that I could build on. So I got some vendor names that were fairly well regarded. I got some reviews, and I was able to sort of make contact with them. So from that perspective, it's fabulous because it can, and that's low risk. There's nothing dangerous.
You're going to do the extra due diligence once you connect with the company. So there's no risk.
Exactly. But it starts my car and the car begins proceeding down the road, which is then I have to drive it. But still being able to launch myself through a tool like that is real helpful. And something like that, it's great and it's very low risk. There's nothing really horrible that can happen if they didn't give me a 100% perfect answer. It'll get me going. Yeah. Whereas on matters of life or death or long-term patient health, you want to be able to get as close to perfect as you can. And I know the AI is going to get there. And in many ways, AI right now can do things that in amounts of time that humans can only dream of. But it's always got to look over your shoulder a little bit, I feel, with that at this point.
I've heard it's described as augmented right now.
Oh, there we go.
It augments, it doesn't replace.
I've heard it's like a very, very precocious and wise teenager. It knows a lot. It's quite brilliant. You're dazzled by what it can come up with, but it's still a teenager. And
sometimes it's overconfident.
Exactly.
That's a good example. Moving beyond patient engagement, is there an area of health IT that maybe, not enough people are talking about that maybe they should be, that you think could, cause some issues in healthcare if we don't talk about it and focus on it more?
There's one thing that is driving me a little bit bonkers right now, and I can see down the road as patients become more aware of this right that they have, even driving me a little more bonkers. And I'm all about patient rights and patient empowerment to be able to access their data. But there's something very interesting. It's a small part of the 21st Century Cures Act, and it mandates that we have to make a good faith attempt to provide interoperability of a patient's record with whatever digital health app a patient may choose to bring to the table. The precondition is that whatever app they bring to the table has to be OpenAI capable, and meet certain standards. But even with that, there's no guarantee that the app that they're going to bring is one that we can natively or easily support, and we do have to expend a fair amount of energy to be able to work with that app. That's the law, that we have to do that. And that's, again, I think we'll get through that. It hasn't become a big headache yet, again, but I suspect it might.
Mm-hmm.
But here's another angle to this as well. If the developer of that app were to have a breach on the app, they're not business associates of ours, so we wouldn't be personally liable, but from a goodwill and from a trust and from a reputational and even a financial perspective, it could hit us hard. So we don't have the kinds of control that we ostensibly have over our business associates in terms of memorializing agreements of how they're going to handle our EHI or PHI. With these folks, and yet we're kind of on the hook for, God forbid, if they're sloppy. So that's a worry, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that, but that one kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah, I heard Shah describe the regulation that if a patient comes to you with the website, we're going to exploit your patient information.com, then you still have to share that information with them, right? Like literally you are bound to share it, even if it that application is bad.
If they can demonstrate that they're open API capable, you have to make a good faith attempt to do that.
It's up to the patient, right? If they want to be exploited and they choose then you have to allow them to.
Patients are not always as savvy about that as we'd like them to be. So that's always an education process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we always like to wrap up with some career advice on these episodes. And this time I decided to, exploit my friendship with you, Rich. I know that you love music. I don't know if I've met anyone that loves live music more than you. I love watching your Facebook feed.
You're probably pretty close, I'm guessing.
I mean, I'm not as good as you, man. When I see it, I love it, but not you have a passion for it. But anyway, I thought I'd do a non-traditional career question and say, what's a song that provides some good advice for CIOs or maybe aspiring CIOs?
Okay, now that is a question.
The hard part is you probably have so many songs.
Exactly. I'd hate to say "Run, Run, Run" by the Velvet Underground. Some people should run. Being a CIO is not for the faint of heart. So I don't want to say that, though, because, like I said, I love what I do. Guess an easy inspirational one would be "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey, because the message in that is, I think, compelling in as much as CIOs always should remember that their enthusiasm and their desire to be transformational is infectious. And if you're not winning people over right away, keep at it, because eventually when they see they see how excited you are by it and how passionate you are about a lot of that, it wears off. And they become like that too. So it's something you may be getting discouraged at various points because you have something you think is going to change the world, and you're kind of feeling like you're banging your head against the wall trying to get people to believe in it. But yeah, keep at it. For a band, I guess another one, a band I'll be seeing in a couple of weeks, actually. How about "Float On" by Modest Mouse? Because that song's about people dealing with all sorts of weird adversity, really strange situations, and you know what? They get through it. They muddle through it. They just float on. And I think that's, as a CIO, oftentimes that's what you have to do, because you get hit from all sides with things. And you can't personalize it because none of that's meant personally. If someone's frustrated with something or something is less than satisfactory, it's their duty to tell me that, and it's my duty to try to fix it. But sometimes there are days when it just seems like everything's coming from all directions, and the best thing you can do is just float on. So
Nice.
those are a couple that pop into my head.
I like it. That was fun. Yeah, and it's funny the run. I have heard some people say that the CIO job has become more challenging. So there's an element there, but I like it. Flow it on is like, hey, this has become more challenging, but it's not personal. That's good advice.
Keep doing what you're doing and believe in it. So I guess we could fuse all three of those songs into a pithy statement. Right?
I love it. Well, Rich, this is awesome. I appreciate you joining us for this episode and sharing your insights and perspectives. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for the CIO podcast by Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcast application. Thanks, Rich.
Well, thank you.